Thierry Fremaux, I mean, what's beautiful about the selection here in Cannes? Well, I think it's the idea that it's something that talks about what cinema is at that particular moment. I mean, its strength and its the contemporary aspect of it. There's a you got at the end of the 12 days. I think you go away loving cinema even more, loving life even more as well. The idea of life in cinema that Truffaut talked about. I mean, he maybe began it in Night for Day. I mean, cinema is cinema more important than life, but that's the idea. And when you're in Cannes, I mean, you're sort of closed in here on the Côte d'Azur, on the south of France, this wonderful area of the world, but you've got life on screen and you've got this aesthetic side, but you've got things as well that remain, and you can see that the trip was worth it. So when you've got this sort of heterogeneity there, but I mean, can you find a consistency in this? Well, we don't look for consistency. I mean, during the winter, we watch the films, we select them for what they are, their own intrinsic value. But sometimes things sort of come out of this. And, once you take a step back, you realize that in the film selected, in the themes, once again, as much in terms of the content as the form, there are certain points of convergence that come out, and either themes that come out in the scenarios that are in common. Or but this year, for instance, I was talking about it with Luc Dardenne, and it's incredible. You've invented filming of the back of the neck. The camera that's behind the character, if you like, and they filming very close to the back of the neck. And a lot of filmmakers deal with this now. Jacques Audiard reinvented a sort of car chase, if you like, and working on the sound. Putting yourself in the place of the character in the sound. A big scene in A Prophet, and you find that a lot now in French cinema, a lot too. And I mean, there are common themes and there are ways of doing things that evolve, and filmmakers see each other's films during the year. So I mean, but when we're not looking for anything consistent, I mean, the editorial line comes afterwards, if you like, and it comes afterwards when we present the selection even. And people say, what are the major themes this year? I never answer that question, of course, because we're not looking to find a theme. But after 12 days of the festival, there things will appear. But the whole selection, if you like, not just the competition, the whole official selection and all the parallel sections as well. I mean, it talks about the state of cinema. I think there's a lot of love stories, which is not always the case, is it? Well, it's nevertheless, I mean, it's love is a fundamental theme. And I think love as much as intimacy. And in the films that we've got, and the French selection, I think, embodies this pretty well. There are films like Emmanuel Berco's film, Jacques Audiard's film, Stéphane Brézé's film, which talk about the world. And there are films like Valérie Donzelli's or Mai Wen's film, which talk about something intimate. So love, passion, society. But again, it's chance. But it's good because, I mean, it's both things at the same time. You've got Jacques Audiard is continuing to revisit this sort of X-ray of French society, and giving these characters which psychologically put us very much inside the character. And what I've been struck by this year particularly is that there's this Western society, all Western societies in a very deep crisis, political crisis, economic crisis, identity crisis, environmental crisis. And we're not doing anything about it. I mean, we all know it, but we're not doing anything. And that's why there's people not far away. You've got, there's people who haven't got a roof over their head, they haven't got a job, they haven't got money, they're not educated, they've got problems, of making ends meet. And, cinema won't solve the problems, but at least it tells us stuff. It shows it. Jacques Audiard's film, for instance, talking about this Tamil immigrant, people coming from war in their country, they're arriving in France. I don't think ever in French cinema have we gone so deep into people's minds, the minds of people who see us in France from a different point of view. We think of us as being normal people, and we see others. This is the other way around now. And it's beautiful to see, from a cinematographic point of view and as well as social point of view. He said at the press conference that there were hypotheses as well on the substance and on the form. He's surprised to see that cinema can still be creative to invent things. Is it still inventing? Yes, it can be creative. It's increasingly difficult to be original because, cinema's been around for 120 years. There's TV, there's video, there's internet, there's all of this stuff, which of course has come to give the world of images, further ingredients. But I'm very struck to see how cinema is still doing. It's still surviving. I mean, it's not really inspired by series. It's got its own language, if you like. I mean, it's 1.5 to 3 hours of films. I mean, they've still got this rhythm. And, I'm very struck to see how filmmakers still have this creativity. I mean, it's a question of, of debate, if you like. There's a lot of creativity in the Hungarian film, Laszlo Mészáros film, talking about Auschwitz. The film itself, in its form, raises the question of how can you, how should you, how can you fictionalize the story that people have always said should never be represented. It can't be represented. You can't do something spectacular. You can't make a spectacle out of the Holocaust. So these are discussions, debates, I think, which are going to be brought up with this idea and the what is the position of the image? And this is something that you get in cinema, but you don't often get it in TV. But in France, when there was the attacks that terrorist attacks that came up, what can you show? What should you show? Internet, of course, a different issue, but there's the real existence of snuff movies, and cinema has never really shown real death. Internet as well shows a death. On the internet, you see people who are decapitated, and the Cannes Film Festival is a sort of this mix of filmmakers who are posing questions. 120 years after the creation of film, I think filmmakers are still asking these questions. They're asking the right questions. And in a selection in Cannes like this one, I think this can provide, or it can bring films which are looking at our positioning as a spectator. What are the countries that have surprised you the most in terms of the themes and the proposals they've got? There's 3 countries which have been around for about 10 years. There's Romania, Mexico, and Korea. In the 1970s, the big providers of films was Eastern Europe, but that's far less now. There's a Hungarian film this year, but there's fewer and fewer films from Russia, from Poland. And, these are questions that arise, of course. Of course, there's the European Commission's rules as well, because we're in Europe, in countries which haven't got creators, not defending their creators. And in France, we seem to be people who are weird people. We defend creators and we defend, rather than consumers. I mean, we're all consumers, but we defend creators, and we still consume things. And Mexico remains a country where each year there's a Mexican film. And it's never by the same director, if you like. So there's these young generations constantly bubbling up. Romania, Corneliu and Radu, I mean, they're already well established, but, they're back and they're confirmed. And Korea, historically a great cinema country, they're still revisiting things. I mean, this sort of crisscrossing of genres, with an auteur film, but which is a detective film, a historical film, which is nevertheless an art house film, and that's very important. And then you've got people like Sophie, and who embodies himself the singularity of creation. And once again, this way of making cinema which is different, and you've got to accept this difference, even if since the beginning of the history of cinema, if you like, particularly thanks to or because of American cinema, there are codes, if you like, which are classic codes of what a film is. It's about 1 hour, 40 minutes, 2 hours long that tells a story, and it grabs you with its emotion. You've got this narrative line which says that you mustn't be bored. But cinema isn't just that. And when you got the first abstract paintings, for instance, people wondered what it was. And then people realized that it was art nevertheless. It was creation. And cinema, you've got to accept that principle too. There are people who do things differently. I'm not saying that in this selection there are films which are difficult to watch, that you get bored with, because it's not the case. But we've got over that decade, if you like, where you know. Being boring meant that you were art house, if you like, but it wasn't the case. But we've had to overcome that, and we've done that now. But now, somebody like Jos Santimos, with his film *The Lobster*, which is in the competition, with these great international actresses, Colin Farrell, Sidhu, and so on. It's the narrative method and the story, what it's telling. It's something which is quite extraordinary, and it's extraordinarily extravagant. I mean, you don't understand everything, but you're happy not to understand. You get carried away by it, if you like. I mean, you want to try to understand what's going on, but you're happy to see this world, which is not realistic, telling something else. That's not just cinema, but I mean, that's the Cannes Film Festival as well. If you come to Cannes, you want this sort of experience. So to look more like, to look more at the competition now, in what way did the Coen brothers influence it? Well, I don't know, but I think if we asked them the question, I think they would say, and I think it's the opposite way around. I think they'd say, I think that they're going to be inspired. I mean, they're very curious, they're very open, but as well, they're very modest, and it's very complicated for them. I mean, they were people, among the people who said, well, no, we're not, we don't want to come to judge. And they've said, we're not here to judge. We're going to see the way it works with the jury as well, the other members. But I think they're going to go with the flow. Steven Spielberg, I think, never imagined that after 12 days he would give the Palme d'Or to a film like Blue is the Warmest Colour, because it's totally different from the sort of film that he, as a filmmaker and artist, would make. And that's what's fantastic. He awarded the prize to a film which wasn't like something he would do. And maybe the Coens are going to like something which isn't like what they do. So of course, everything about Cannes. Where do you get the best view of Cannes from? Well, it depends what you're looking for. I mean, it could be on the steps. It could be looking at the films. I think Truffaut said, the closer you are, the more things you see on the screen. And there are some people who always want to sit at the back, the very back of the theatre. When I was a festival goer, I always tried, when I had the right sort of ticket, I could go and sit down at the front. But there's all sorts of different points of view and viewpoints over the bay, over the photo call. And what's wonderful for the photographers is that very often, they're not here to say whether it's good or bad. It's not the press conference where you can sense straight away whether the film has been well received or not. The photographers, they give me a sort of, a little sort of rush of happiness in a way, because they're sort of, there's a group of people, a very different type of people, but nevertheless there is this sort of climax, this 10-minute climax with the photos, and that's part of, I think, what makes Cannes. So we're just a few hours away from the opening. What sort of state of mind are you in? Well, I'm happy. My state of mind is one of happiness, satisfaction that it's beginning. I always take things on the good side. When I started with Gilles Jacob, Cannes was already a very well organized machine. I remember at the time, I said to myself, because I was a loyal festival goer before, and I always said that, I could trust this, and it's still the same. Cannes is a wonderful machine, if you like. I'm very happy to have Pierre Lescure alongside me, because I'm welcoming him now, because I'm already here. He's the new president, and he's bringing something particular, something individual, something personal to the festival, and that's wonderful. Because Cannes is a collective job, though. I talk about the selection, but there's people with me who actually make the selection. And when we talk, there's more than 1,000 people making sure that Cannes is Cannes. Everything's ready, and we're going to welcome people. And there is this feeling that we're in charge of the festival, but it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to everybody that makes it what it is. It's like all the panels on the Croisette, all the adverts you see there. Sometimes people say, "Oh, what does that mean?" No, fortunately, there are things all over the place. It means that there is this economic health. People are advertising. That's what the festival is too. And, the auteur, it's sort of this common house, if you like, where they're ready, everything's ready at the same time.